This is off of Jeff Benner's Ancient Hebrew Research website, which is the one that I have in your notes. Put those in your notes. So if you got your notes in the email, you can go to that and you can click and you can read. You can like be on there a whole year, and you can learn Hebrew, and you can learn modern Hebrew, but you can learn ancient Hebrew as well, which is really where we want to go, right? If we're going to want to learn this. Hold on, I'm going to get some more notes together here. These are for the young lady that just walked in the door, if you want to pass those back. Anyway, what we've got here, we're going to look at this. I'm going to go over this a little bit. What you've got all the way on the left, even though Hebrew reads right to left, this chart reads left to right. All right? So what you have on the left where you're looking at the word early, okay, that's the earliest letter, and they're almost, letter is not even the right word for what those are. Okay, they're pictures is what they are. And all of them have a meaning, which you can look over a couple of columns there, and you can look at the Aleph, which is the ox head. The early name of the letter is L, okay, because in a way it is the letter that represents God. It's the beginning, the Aleph, the ox, the strong leader. As the language progressed, they got away from using pictures and began to use symbols. And the reason they did that, I think that's one, the reason they did that is because there weren't to be any graven images. Okay? And remember that Torah was originally written to what audience? The Israelites coming out of Egypt. All right? And in Egypt, they had all of these pictures that were hieroglyphics. And they were not letters. It was not a letter alphabet. It was meanings. So they have a picture of a whatever, and it would mean something, but it wasn't a letter. Okay, so there was no reading like we would think of reading letters and words and things like that. They were picture writing. Okay, but in Egypt, one of the beliefs that developed is that these images represented idols. Okay. And as you know, when Israel was brought out of Egypt, number one command and the number one thing that they needed to know was no idols, no graven images. So the evidence is that the language that Moses wrote, that Jehovah wrote in on the tablets to give to Moses, and then Moses wrote in, is the middle or late of those images there. Okay? So the ones all the way on the left are Paleo-Hebrew, which means they're even earlier than regular Hebrew. But then as they developed them into letters, they didn't want them to look like graven images. Okay, which is what you have in the middle column there, more or less. That is right. There is a letter there that is gone, that is not used anymore. And we didn't learn that letter, the letter Ga, which is a rope, all right? And that letter went bye-bye by Jesus' day. Now, in Jesus' day, in Yeshua's day, they were using modern Hebrew. Okay, see over there on the right? Those are the letters that we learned. Those are the basic letters that we learned. If you went and bought a Hebrew Bible, those are the letters that you would be reading. If you went to Israel today, those are the letters that you would be reading. Those are probably the letters that they had all the way back in the first century. They're based in Aramaic letters. Aramaic letters are based in Babylonian letters. So it just gives you a little bit of the development of the language. And the reason we look back to the ancient letters, okay, is to give us more meat in the meaning of letters and words. That's the reason. It's not as if, I don't know what else to say about it other than it gives you more meat in knowing what a word means. So it's really neat and enjoyable to do, right? Okay. So you have the letters and their development there. You have the ancient name of the letter, okay, and then you have what the picture is a picture of. Okay, so you have an ox head is the Aleph. Then you have like words that are meanings of that picture. Now, there are more words than what are listed here. Words are ideas. So the ideas that are represented here are represented in those pictures. Get it? Okay. Now, and then moving over into the modern Hebrew, and then you have the modern name of the letters and how they're pronounced. And then you can look at the way that our own letters, Greek letters and Latin letters, grew out of the Hebrew. I am one that believes that the Hebrew was the very first language that used letters. Okay, and that when Jehovah gave them the words on the mountain, he was giving them not only morality, but he was giving them a language. And so anyway, that's that. And now you can keep that. And when you're going back and you're looking at words, you can do a little bit of your own research in it. And why don't we go down the list? And I'm going to be reading the modern Hebrew, that one right there. We'll go down the list. And what I do when I want to memorize something like this is I cover up the name of the letter. And then I just go down and see if I can remember the name of the letter. If you remember the name of the letter, then you will know the sound the letter makes, right? So you have Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tate, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Sade, Kuf, Resh, Shin, and Tav. And Hebrew is very phonetic. In other words, if you write the letters out, you ought to be able, almost always, you can sound out the letter, and that'll help you know what word you're looking at, even though you don't have the vowels of the letter. All right, you'll be able to figure it out. If you have Yod, He, Vav, He, then you know you have Yehovah, right? Yod, He, Vav, He. Right to left. Yod, He, Vav, He. Yehovah. All right? So that's the way Hebrew works. Now, if you want to learn the vowels, then we would need a class once a week of a couple hours for about a year. And you'd be able to learn all the vowels and all of that. But we are going to, next week, my goal is I'm going to give you Hebrew words, and we're going to see if we can read them. Okay? See if we can read them aloud. So you'll have some very easy Hebrew words. No, what's the word? Anti-disestablishment. No big, long words. All right, easy words, but we'll just see if we can sound them out and then figure out what they are. Because they're all going to be words that you've already learned, or at least you've been introduced to in your notes. Okay? All right. So, thus ends the Hebrew lesson. So we'll move on now with the reading for this week. These readings in Exodus are amazingly dramatic, aren't they? But one of the things that I've noticed is that it's not easy to get the movies out of my mind. Because you read them and you already know Moses is Charlton Heston, right? And you already know when he hears the voice, he hears Moses, right? Like that. But when you go back and you read, then you find out, wait a minute, that isn't exactly what is in the movie. Well, no, it isn't what's in the movie. The movie's Hollywood. Almost all movies are wrong. Okay? So you already know that. All of us, we already know that at our age. They're nice to watch and they're all that, but to get all of the details in there right isn't easy. Okay? So this week we begin in Exodus 6, and I'm out of notes. Sorry. And the name of the reading is Vaeira. Sounds a lot like another reading, which is Vaeira. There's Vaeira and Vaeira. Okay, this is Vaeira, which means I appeared. Okay? And this is really the beginning of the battle. We left off last week with Moses going into Pharaoh. Moses and Aaron going in, giving him the word, and Pharaoh basically looking at them and going, you got to be joking. I don't know who you are. I mean, I know you are. I don't know who this Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is. And no, I'm not going to let anybody go. Okay? So what is going to happen tonight is the beginning of the battle, and it's a battle. It's really not a battle that is that we have to worry about God losing. There's never a battle like that. Okay, this is a battle where Pharaoh and Egypt are going to get knocked down, and then God's going to raise them back up again. Then they're going to get knocked down again. It's almost like one of those bags. You hit the bag, and it goes down, comes back up again, hit it again, it goes down, comes back up again. And the reason all of this is going on, basically the reason, if you read the reading, is what? That you, Israel, and Egypt, which basically means the rest of the world, may know that I am Jehovah. I am the only God. I am Elohim. I am the one. All of these other gods that you're worshiping are not really gods at all. And you know what? I'm going to prove that to you now. Okay? So we begin the reading with these words. God spoke further to Moses and said to him, I am Adonai. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai. Yet by my name, Adonai, did I not make myself known to them. So you might ask, well, wait a minute. We read in Genesis that, and remember, Adonai is not in the Hebrew. Adonai is not, what is there is really Jehovah. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Okay? So he's saying to them, I didn't reveal all that I am to them. Okay? In other words, they didn't know me in the way that you are going to know me. And they didn't know me in the way that Israel is going to know me, and that's the nature of relationship. In Genesis, we're dealing with the beginnings of relationship with Elohim. Okay? Now he's going to take Israel, and his desire is to go deep into a relationship of intimacy. So they're going to get to know more of who he is. Now remember, the name of the book of Exodus is the word names in Hebrew, Shemot, okay? And one of the reasons I believe that it is named names is because this is where God reveals his name. And he reveals his name to Moses. So that's going to be a little bit later in our readings, but we're going to go ahead and look at the name now. Some of this you already know, but it's really good to look at and go over it again. All right. So the word God is the word Elohim in Hebrew, and it's not a name. Okay? It's a title that means mighty one. Literally, it means mighty one. It is used with the emphasis on the creator who is strong and who is a judge. And it begins, the Bible begins with Elohim, right? In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth, all right? But the other word that in our English Bibles is either L-O-R-D in capital letters or Adonai in more Jewish Bibles is the Yod-He-Vav-He, Y-H-V-H or W-H. Either one is all right. Sometimes you hear Yahweh, sometimes you hear Yahweh. Sometimes you hear Jehovah, sometimes you hear Yahuwah. Nobody knows exactly what is the right way to pronounce it. The way that you pronounce it now and believe is the right way is probably the right way until you learn another way. Yes? Okay, but, hello. The meaning of Yehovah, of the Yod-He-Vav-He, we'll look at this in depth when we get later on in Exodus. But the meaning of it is the one who is merciful, the one who is close, the one who desires a relationship, okay? And hence, the Yod-He-Vav-He is a lot like breathing, Yod-He, because he wants to be as near as your breath. Okay? He wants to be in you and have a relationship with you that is deeper than any human relationship could ever be. So the ancient language, okay, of the ancient pictures, you have the hand revealed, the nail revealed. That gives us the idea of who Jehovah is. He's the one that is going to die on your behalf. Okay? The hand revealed, the nail revealed. That's how much he loves us. Okay, let's read on in Exodus. Verse 6 to 8. Therefore say to Bnei Yisrael, I am Adonai, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from their bondage, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. I will take you to myself as a people, and I will be your God. You will know that I am Adonai your God, who brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. So I will bring you into the land that I swore to give Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, and give it to you as an inheritance. I am Adonai. Now, whenever I'm reading this and you're hearing this in your brain, there's nothing wrong at all with replacing Adonai with Yehovah or Yahweh. Sometimes I do that, and people go, but that doesn't say Yahweh, it says Adonai. And I'm like, I know. Let's learn this all over again. Okay, so what you're really hearing is, and give it to you as an inheritance, I am Yehovah. Yod-He-Vav-He. Now, in reading this, even if you didn't already know this, This is like wedding language. This is marriage language. Okay? Notice the words. I will bring you out. I will take you. Right? That's the language of a husband to a bride. Okay? And the rabbis, they understood that the book of Exodus is all about an engagement, arrangement between Jehovah and Israel, his bride, with the Torah being the wedding document. In Hebrew, a wedding document is a ketubah. And to this day, in Jewish weddings, the husband writes out, or has somebody write out, a ketubah, and then they frame it and stick it in their house. And what it has what the husband is going to do. Here's what I will do for you. And then the wife agrees, all right, that I will be your wife, and here's what I will do. On a modern ketubah, it ought to have the responsibilities of the husband and the wife. And they're listed there. Rather than just, standing here, excuse me, and hearing, will you promise to love her, cherish her, keep her as long as you both shall live? I do. Okay? Rather than that, their vows are written out. They're a lot longer than the traditional Christian vows. So, anyway. And, by the way, Shabbat is the engagement ring. Okay? Shabbat is the symbol that acts as the engagement ring. The Torah is the written document, and Shabbat is the symbol. And the reason we know that is when it's given, and we'll read this next week, it is given as the, not a, the sign of this covenant. Okay. All right. In Hosea, we read these words about Jehovah's desire. Then I will betroth you to me forever. Yes, I will betroth you to me with righteousness, justice, covenant loyalty, and compassion. Isn't that beautiful? What he wants to do for us. Okay, now going back up into the Exodus 6:6-8. Notice the promises that are there. I will free you, or I will bring you out. Okay, that's what that means. I will free you. Secondly, I will deliver you. Okay, next, I will redeem you, and I will take you unto myself. Then, later, there are 3 more promises in what we read. I will be your God, I will bring you into the land, and I will give it to you as an inheritance. And by the way, when you read about this inheritance back in Genesis, when it's promised to Abraham, the word is used over and over and over again, forever, 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 as an everlasting agreement. Okay? So all in all, in this statement that Jehovah makes about what he's going to do, all in all, there are 7 promises. Okay? As we've already learned, that number, the number 7, is huge in significance in the Bible, right? I gave some examples, and this is just a scratch of the surface of the examples, right? The world was created in 7 days. Shabbat is the 7th day. Then you have every 7 years, there's a Shabbat for the land. Then you have every 7 times 7 years is a Jubilee, right? And then you have the way the feasts are laid out. The beginning feast of the year is what? Passover. How it's unleavened bread, okay? Passover is at the beginning of unleavened bread, and how long is unleavened bread? 7 days. And then to get to the next big one, it's 7 times 7, 49 days, and you're at Shavuot. And then later in the year, it ends, the year, if you will, ends with Sukkot, which is 7 days long. So it's really big. And then the book of Revelation, good grief, it's like 30 times that number is mentioned in the book of Revelation. It's built around 7, right? 7 churches, 7 lampstands, 7 plagues, blah, blah, blah. 7 spirits of God. Now, in Judaism, there is something that has developed in the last couple thousand years known as a Seder. We usually do one of these every year. I hope we're going to do one this year, and we're going to do it together, because last year we had to do it in our houses. Remember? Now, it wasn't bad to do it in our houses. The reason was kind of out there, but anyway, in a traditional Jewish Seder, there are 4 cups of wine that are drunk, consumed, thrown down, or thrown back, whatever. All right? Not back, yeah. All right? And they are built around the wedding covenant, in which there are 4 glasses of wine in the process of a bride and groom getting married. Okay? And they're related. This is all related. All right? So the names, I wrote down the names of the cups. Now, this is a traditional Jewish Seder. There's another one that I read about, and we may do it that way this year. I don't know. There's another one that has, guess how many cups? 7. Yeah. Now, I know some of you are thinking, 7 glasses of wine, 4 glasses of wine. What is there to lose? Your driver's license, for one thing. Okay? Who knows what else, all right? Now, so you know, have you guys all been to one that we've done here? Okay. So you know, you don't literally get 4 glasses of wine. You get 1 glass, okay, and you can take 4 sips out of it. We don't want anybody getting schnockered at the church festival. They did that. Paul warned them about that. He was like, look, you guys are getting together and you're having a little much. Yeah. So take it easy on the communion juice. Anyway, back to Exodus. Okay? Let's look at each of these cups and how there are parallels, not only in the wedding, but in the words and life of Yeshua in the writings in the New Testament. All right? So number 1 is the cup of sanctification. That word means separate. Did you notice as you were reading that, well, and we're going to look at it in a minute, that God was like, there's going to be a difference between Israel and Egypt. Okay? I'm going to draw a line. The way God is going to bring you out is, in order to bring you out, he's got to grab you, and in order to grab you, you've got to be like separated from what he's going to bring you out of. Okay? That's the idea there. All right? Now, in Egypt, they were under labor. That was forced labor. In the Bible, Yeshua spoke about the labor, the forced labor of the devil. Okay? He said in John 8, amen, amen, which is a way of saying, really, really, I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. So there's the relationship. The next cup is the cup of deliverance. I will deliver you from their bondage, is what Jehovah said. So where the Egyptians are oppressing Israel, so the devil oppresses us or other human beings, all right? And Yeshua says this, if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. That language goes all the way back to what's happening here in the Exodus. Okay? The next cup is the cup of redemption. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. In other words, I will pay whatever price is needed to get you out of Egypt, out of the darkness. So Israel was redeemed out of Egypt by great judgments. They were plagues. What about us? How are we redeemed? Well, what did Jehovah say to Israel? I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. Did you know that in the Tanakh that the right arm of Jehovah is Messiah? All right? Yeshua is God's right arm. In Isaiah 59:1, you read, behold, Jehovah's hand is not too short to save, nor his ear too dull to hear. Some versions say Jehovah's arm is not too short in order to be able to save you. Okay? Psalm 98, sing to Adonai a new song, for he has done marvelous things. His right hand and his holy arm have won victory for him. Adonai has made his Yeshua known. That's what that word means. He has revealed his righteousness before the eyes of the nations. Isn't that neat? Now, remember when Yeshua was born and John the Baptist, John the Immerser, was born. John's dad was Zechariah. Then the Zechariah made a statement when John was born. Okay, and these were his words. Blessed be Adonai, God of Israel, for he has looked after his people and brought them redemption. Because he knew Yeshua was on the way. Okay? The fourth and last cup is the cup of praise. He said, I will take you to myself as a people, and I will be your God. Which is beautiful marriage language. It's the language of intimacy. I will take you as mine. I will bring you into my house. Okay? So what does God really want from you and me? Relationship of intimacy. Okay? He wants to walk with us in his garden, like Adam and Eve. He wants to be able to call us his beloved bride. By the way, the words of Yeshua in John, which there's a radio host that quotes them every day. Don't let your heart be troubled. Who is it? Sean Hannity. But don't let your heart be troubled. Don't be afraid. In my Father's house there are many rooms, mansions, however. Okay? And I am going there to get a place ready for you. And I will come back and I will receive you. What is that all about? It's about a wedding. right? So the groom would go and get the house ready. And when the house was ready and the moment was right, he would come back and he would get the bride. Now, there's a lot of things about that we could do weeks on just those verses right there, okay, on all of what that means, that he's building a house and that he's going to come back and that he's going to receive us, all of that, okay? But it's all great and wonderful and beautiful. And what God is about to do in Egypt is a real demonstration of his love. Yes, it is a demonstration of his power. But more than that, it's a demonstration of his love and his commitment that he made to Abraham. Right? Thank God for Abraham. So in Revelation, we read this. Let us, about that day, let us rejoice and be glad and give the glory to him. For the wedding of the Lamb is come, and his bride has made herself ready. Isn't it interesting that you don't read, and he has made his bride ready? Why? Well, the groom, that wasn't the groom's job. The groom didn't do that. The groom didn't get the bride ready. The groom was getting the house ready. The bride was getting the bride ready. Okay? So we have this idea in churchianity that God's going to do everything. Well, he's getting me ready. Well, that's not what I read in the Bible. You're supposed to get yourself ready. That's right. Okay. Anyway, we already know that, right? We know that, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're busy about, getting ourselves ready. Man, do you remember the days? Maybe you were never in these days, but I know a lot of us were. The days where you thought that, I just accept Jesus, and that's over. Yeah. Please, Jesus, come back. I have to take this exam. Anyway, no, there's a lot more to living with him. All right, Exodus 6, verse 9. Moses spoke this way to Bnei Israel, but they did not listen to him. Why? Because of their broken spirit and cruel bondage. Literally, it means shortness of breath. Okay, it was as if the burdens that had been heaped on them had given them such an anguish of spirit that they were not able to breathe under it. Okay? They believed that there was no hope. When you believe that there's no hope, you're not really going to hear anybody, right? Because you're locked in that darkness. So that's what it was like for them. They were locked in this darkness. Okay, so Adonai said to Moses, "See, I have set you as God, or Elohim, to Pharaoh, and Aaron, your brother, will be your prophet." Okay? Now, Pharaoh, that really means something there. And the reason is Pharaoh believed that he was God. He was a God. There was no God above him that he knew of. I mean, he's king of the world, right? And God is saying to Moses, I'm going to make you, Moses, like God to Pharaoh. So God was not only going to exalt his own being, Jehovah, in Egypt, he was going to exalt Moses to a level that was going to be above Pharaoh. And Aaron is going to be your Navi, your voice. Your Navi is the word where we get the word prophet, which is from a word that means fruit. Okay, the prophet bears fruit with his words when they are the words of God, right? So Aaron is going to be like that in Egypt. So that means Aaron's going to be speaking most of the words. Okay? Moving on. Verse 4 in 7. But Pharaoh will not listen to you. So I will lay my hand upon Egypt and bring forth my armies, my people, B'nai Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgment. My armies I will bring out. A couple of meanings to that, okay? There is the idea of Jehovah Zavaot, which means the God of heaven's armies. So you have a couple of things that are going to go on here. One is the God of heaven's armies is going to meet Israel, and Israel's going to be like God's earthly army, right? When he brings them out like a vast army. Okay? Dennis Prager writes about why these plagues happened, or what was the main purposes of them. This is what he wrote, okay? Number one is to force Pharaoh and the Egyptians to release the Hebrews. That's obvious, right? The second reason was in order to punish Pharaoh and the Egyptians for the bondage that they had made Israel suffer under. In other words, it was a judgment. Do you think that God is a righteous judge? Yeah, but he is a judge. Remember Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And remember Abraham's words, because he was worried, because Lot lived in Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abram was worried that there might be some righteous there. And so Abram stepped in when he heard that God was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham stepped in and said, "How dare you? How dare you wipe away the righteous with the wicked?" Now, remember what happened. What did God do when Abraham did that? The words you read in your Bible are, "Far be it from you to do such a thing." But we learned that in Hebrew it means, "How dare you?" Okay, so Abraham is like getting up in God's face and going, "How dare you do that? The righteous judge of all the world. You're not going to act like all the other gods, are you?" Because all the other gods were, what is the word? Capricious. You didn't know. Everything was on a whim. There was no relationship at all. You just basically ran around worried your whole life that you were going to do something and make the gods mad, and then he was going to flood your land. Okay? But Jehovah is not like that. He's not like the other gods. He is righteous, but he is a judge. So we got to remember that. Listen, it's not a message that people like to hear, because then they think you're being judgmental. Like, I'm not being judgmental. I'm not your judge. But there is a judge, and I think it's really good that you know that. Right? Anyway. And yes, your judge is righteous, and he will forgive you. And he is very, very long-suffering. All right? But he is a judge. Okay? So then, he says again, tells Moses again, "But Pharaoh will not listen to you. So I will lay my hand." Oh, we already went over that. Sorry. Okay, the third reason is to demonstrate to the Israelites and the Egyptians that God, the God of the heavens, the God of creation, not the gods of Egypt, is the real God. Okay? Several things are going on there. So, Jehovah says this, "The Egyptians will know that I am Jehovah when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out B'nai Israel from among them. Can't you just picture this? Okay, about what God is about to do, the amazing miracles that God is about to do, and get the movie out of your head. Okay? But get this picture of a whole, like ants, million ants down here in this land, and God's going to reach down and build a bubble around them, and then he's going to grab them and lift them up out of the other land. And the whole while he's doing it, he's bringing these plagues, but he's doing it in a way he hopes that Pharaoh turns back, right? But he knows that he's not going to, because he knows his heart. So, hence the next words that we read. Okay? The Egyptians will know. So, one of the things that we learned from that is that our God is not only thinking about Israel, but he is thinking about the whole world. He's interested in the whole world, isn't he? Don't we read that in Peter? That it's not God's will that any should what? Perish, right? That's the heart of Jehovah. So even in the midst of the judgment, he's being amazingly merciful. Okay? Now, last week, we read the words about the challenge Pharaoh laid out to Moses and God. Okay, so this is going back into a verse that we read last week in 5, verse 2. Pharaoh said this, "Who is Jehovah, that I should listen to his voice and let Israel go? I do not know Jehovah, and besides, I will not let Israel go." In other words, even if I do know Jehovah, I'm not going to let Israel go, but I don't even know who you mean, so forget about it. Okay, notice, there are 3 elements in this challenge, if you will. Number 1, who is Jehovah? Okay, so really, does he even exist? Is this a real God that you're speaking of? Secondly, why should I obey Jehovah? Even if he does exist, why do I need to obey him? It's a challenge to God's authority. And then, why let Israel go? Which is a challenge of God's kingship. So not only is he God over Pharaoh, but he is king over Israel, not Egypt. Egypt is not king over Israel. Okay? So, if you're ready for the battle, here we go. Because that's what's next. Now, we're not going to get through all of them. But what I want you to note is that every judgment that happens, every plague that happens is a direct judgment against one of the gods of Egypt. So we're going to look at who those different gods were and how that worked. And it begins right at the very beginning. You'll remember when this happened. So Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh. This is what I call the prelude to the judgments. And they did as Adonai had commanded. Aaron threw down his staff before Pharaoh and his servants, and it became a tanin, is the Hebrew word. And then Pharaoh called out for the wise men and the sorcerers, and they too, the magicians of Egypt, did the same with their secret arts. For each man threw down his staff, and they became tanin. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Now, how many of you knew that the Hebrew word tanin means crocodile? It doesn't mean snake, okay? It means serpent as a crocodile. Okay, so I have every reason to believe that Aaron threw down the rod and it turned into a crocodile. And then the other magicians brought in crocodiles. Quick, get some crocs. Bring them from out behind the curtain. We'll have some smoke. Poof, and out their crocodiles come. And then Aaron's crocodile eats their crocodiles. If you want it to be a snake, it can be a snake. Only, here's the deal. One of the main gods of Egypt was the crocodile god of the Nile. Sobek is the name. He had the head of a crocodile. The rest of the body was something else. I don't remember exactly what. But they believed that Sobek was the creator of the world. And he was a fertility god, which we're going to find, which from last week's lesson, you may remember the reason why the daughter of Pharaoh would go down and bathe in the river Nile was where the God lived who made you fertile. And she goes down, okay, maybe praying to this God, Sobek, I want to have a baby. And there's a baby in a basket. So she named it Gift of the Gods, Moises. So anyway, all right, so that's the prelude, and now we have the judgments. So, by the way, every year when we have Passover, we dip our finger in the wine and we drop drops and we repeat all of these plagues out loud. Children love it because they get to dip their finger in the grape juice and put it out. It's great. Sprinkle it on their mom or dad or whatever. Okay? So, judgment number 1 is blood. And here are the words. Behold, I will strike the waters that are in the river with the staff that is in my hand, and they will be turned to blood. So Aaron reached out and touched the waters of the Nile, and they were turned to blood. The other god of the Nile was Hapi, and Hapi was the god that gave them fish and water. And what did they not have when the blood struck the Nile? The fish died, and they couldn't drink the water. Hapi goes down. Second judgment, frogs. Stretch out your hand with your staff over the rivers, canals, and pools, and cause frogs to come up over the land of Egypt. There is a Jewish children's song that goes like this. And it's usually done during the Seder in the home, in the Jewish home. Children sing this. I don't know how it exactly goes, but I'll make it up. One morning when Pharaoh woke in his bed, there were frogs on his head, and frogs in his bed, frogs in his nose, and frogs on his toes. Frogs here, frogs there, frogs were jumping everywhere. So the god in Egypt that looked like a frog was Heket, the goddess of childbirth. So, when this plague was over, okay, and Pharaoh recognized that it was over, he hardened his heart. And he's going to do that again and again and again, remember? And what is hardness of heart? Well, bitterness, rebelliousness, okay, all of those things that we learned about that we don't want to have in our life, all right? That's what's going on in his heart. All right, the next judgment, gnats or lice, depending on what version you read. All right, tell Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the earth, and it will become gnats throughout all the land of Egypt. Aaron struck the dust of the earth, and it became gnats. Now in Egypt, Geb was the god of the dust, or earth, okay? And they believed that one of the pharaohs of Egypt was Geb, all right? But so now the dust of the earth, rather than giving them something nice, like things to eat, the dust of the earth is going to produce or overproduce these gnats, and they're going to be everywhere. I was in the Everglades when I was a little boy, because I grew up down in that region. My dad and I went camping in the Everglades in July. Not recommended. He wanted to get away, you know how it is, and we used to go out in the woods and do stuff a lot. But we went down to the Everglades, and they were bad. I mean, the mosquitoes, not gnats, mosquitoes were everywhere. And we went to bed. We had a van that was made into a bed and a little sink and things like that. We built it together. And we were in the van, and I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And I remember this. I had to have been like 5, but I remember this. Okay, and he was like, my dad was like, if you're going to go to the bathroom out there, you better open and shut that door in a hurry and not let those mosquitoes in there. And I opened the door, and they were in my nose, in my ears. They were just a cloud of everywhere. It was awful. It was horrible. I ran like this, trying to get to the bathroom. That's all I remember about it. The next day, because we were going to be there a couple nights, the next day we left the Everglades and went farther down into the Keys onto an island where there were no bugs. Anyway, they can be bad. I just read a book about the history of Florida, and mosquitoes would be bad enough in certain areas that people who had cattle and were driving them, this is back in the 1800s, where they had cowboys, except they had a different name. Anybody know what the name was? Crackers, okay, because they had whips. Crack the whip to drive the cattle. And this one family was driving the cattle, and there was this black cloud that was heading in his direction. He didn't know what it was, and it was bugs. It was mosquitoes. And he watched cows die, just fall over from the bugs because they get in your nose, couldn't breathe. Okay? These were gnats or lice, just as bad. Okay, when this was over, this plague of the gnats, then God said this, I will make a distinction between my people and your people. By tomorrow, this sign will happen. So, did you know that God marks his own? If you're his, you have his mark on you. Okay? This is in Ezekiel. Back in the days of Ezekiel, Adonai said to him, go throughout the city, through the midst of Jerusalem. Make a mark on the foreheads of the people who sigh and moan over all the abominations that are committed in it. In other words, well, let's just bring this right down home. Has it burdened and bothered you to watch what has happened in our nation the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Okay? And to watch how what was wrong is now right, and what was right is now wrong, just like right here in your face. Those that are bothered by that and that grieve over that are those that have his mark on them. So, on the one hand, we have great joy in us, but on the other hand, there's a grief that kind of goes along with that. I don't know what other word to use, but it's what happened when God looked down on the earth in Moses' days. What's the word the Bible used? It grieved him in his heart, right? So, now, the idea of mark in the Tanakh in Hebrew is usually the letter Tav, which is the cross. Remember? Because that's a mark. That's a sign of the covenant. By the way, in Revelation, There's a mark. That's the wrong mark, right? The mark of the beast. But there's another mark. That's the right mark. That's the mark of Jehovah, the mark of God. The mark, and in Revelation, it speaks of those, the ones that endure are those who, says it more than once, are those who keep his commandments and the testimony of Jesus. Did you know that was in there? Okay, that's in the end of the Bible, the New Testament. Keep his commandments and the testimony of Jesus. Some people think you have the testimony of Jesus, but there's no need to keep the commandments because you're under grace or whatever. That's a very confused idea, as a lot of you already know. Okay? Because Paul writes about something like that, but that is not what he means. He does not in any way mean don't keep the commandments. Okay, that would be ridiculous. That means go do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. And then you end up in a mess like we're in right now, right? Okay, the next judgment is flies. I don't like flies at all. They're nasty. They vomit. Did you know that? Did you know when they land on your cake, what they do almost instantly after landing is they go bleh. They vomit on your cake. Keep them off of there. All right? So, or else, it says, if you do not let my people go, I will send the swarm of flies on you and on your servants, on your people, and into your houses. By the way, I've had flies that bite worse than mosquitoes. Up north, Alaska, up in the interior, they have those black flies that just zap you. Oh. So the god of the air in Egypt was the god named Shu, that they believed give them the air that they breathe. So during this judgment, rather than breathing air, they're breathing flies. Okay? And when this judgment is over, Pharaoh calls out for Moses and for Aaron and says this, go, sacrifice to your God in the land. But Moses said that would not be right. For the offerings we intend to sacrifice to Adonai our God are an abomination to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice what is an abomination to the Egyptians, wouldn't they stone us? We must walk a 3-day journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to Jehovah our God, just as he tells us. So as you're going to see later, the Egyptians worshipped the bull god as well. Bulls are what Israel is going to use in their offerings, okay? And the Egyptians worship the bulls. Basically, the reason this is going to be an abomination to the Egyptians, and in a way what Moses is saying is, my God will eat your gods, and your people will not like it. Right? Because when they made their offerings, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are to be eaten. Did you know that? Okay, it's not just burn them up. There was one that was a burn it up, burn it all up. But the others were to be eaten. Some of them were to be eaten by the priests. It was like their payment for doing their job. Great, you guys get to eat, steak every night. It was a really hard job. Think about it. Being a priest in Israel was being like a butcher, right? They had white garments that got blood all over them every day, right? And being the griller of the animals, and that fire was huge. This was not like a little grill. This was like, how much square was the altar. And they had to keep it going and keep the wood in there. That was like the job of the priest. So they got to eat. That's funny. No. Thank God we have them now. All right, so Pharaoh said this, I will let you go so that you may sacrifice to Jehovah your God in the wilderness. Only you must not go very far away. And by the way, pray for me. Okay, so it's like he's giving a little bit here. He's beginning to open up and give a little bit, right? But you got to remember that the devil, if he won't convince you to join up with him, at least keep him nearby. Okay, or he at least wants to keep you nearby. He'll let you go a little bit, fine. All right, as long as you don't like dive all the way into this thing with God and go deep in your relationship, that's what's really going to make him angry. But if you just want to go to church once a week, go ahead. It's going to be all right. Do you get it? Okay. Okay, the next judgment, the fifth judgment, was livestock disease. Okay, which is interesting because they just got done speaking about livestock, right? Okay, so here's the words. Behold, the hand of Adonai will fall upon your livestock that are in the field, on the horses, the donkeys, camels, herds, and flocks. There will be a crushing plague. The bull god's name, or the cattle god, was Apis. Apis. All right? And that's exactly what happened. The next judgment that we read about is boils. Okay, in Exodus 9:9. It will become fine dust over all the land of Egypt and will become boils, erupting with sores on both men and animals throughout all the land. The god in Egypt that this was a judgment of was most likely the god Heka, which was the god of magic and medicine. Interesting that those went together in Egypt. The god of magic and medicine that was believed to bring healing to all people. Okay, and last, it's not the last plague, but it's the last one in our reading for this week, is the judgment of hail. Behold, tomorrow at about this time, I will cause it to rain a very severe hailstorm, the likes of which has not occurred in Egypt since the day it was founded until now. Nut was the goddess of the heavens, the goddess that brought rain, that brought life. Now the goddess Nut was going to rain hail on them. See how each of these plagues is not only a judgment on the gods, but it allows Israel and Egypt, if their eyes will be open, some of their eyes were open because a lot of Egyptians went with Israel when they left the land. There are going to be Egyptians that go into Pharaoh and go, look, we've had enough. All right, let's get these people out of here. We need to let them go because something real is going on in the land, right? So anyway, that's it for tonight. We're going to pick up more plagues next week. But what I want to know, do you have any questions to be addressed? Yes, go ahead. No, I have not read anything about why he waited until after the third plague. The others, if you look at them, they increase in severity. And it was like the beginnings of them, so they're both enduring whatever it is that they needed to endure. I have an idea, but I haven't read anything about it. Do you want to hear my idea? All right, here's my idea. Israel didn't know. Israel had lost their trust in Jehovah. Now, they had been enslaved in Egypt about 200 years. I know that you've read 400 years. 400 years is how long they were there, not how long they were enslaved. Okay? Remember, they were there many years. Joseph was there and brought them over, and it was good for a while until the new Pharaoh arose. All right? But the idea is, see, when Moses went to the Israelites, at the beginning, they were like, great, all right, dude, do it. And then the plague happened, and Pharaoh was like, don't give them any more straw. And then when that happened, the Israelites were like, Moses, we don't want you. Get out of here. It hasn't worked. This is not working. It's not good. So Israel had to learn, just as much as Egypt had to learn, that, look, this is real. So that's my idea, but good question. Anybody else? At the end. Yes. Oh, I did. Oh, thank you very much. What a gift you are. You're like my wife. You were in the middle of that sentence. And I'm like, I was in the middle of what sentence? But you know what? It goes both ways in our house. Now, what was that again? No. Not only was it a judgment against the gods of Egypt, but it was a way of revealing to the Egyptians that the gods that they believed in were not nice. They were not good. They weren't helpful. Yes, they weren't real. We know that. Okay. Yeah. They were inferior in every way. David. David is speculating. Ah, okay. Right. That's right. 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 So yeah, so it was in a way it was like, when you're heating up the water and the water gradually heats up. It's like that. It's like we're going to turn this up, 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 up. And yes, this is a progress. This is a way of illustrating God's progressive discipline, which is exactly what a good mom and dad does, right? I mean, if you're, yeah. Yes. Right. Well, they were because they lived in a different land. That's right. Yep. They lived in a different land. Yep. John. Mm-hmm. You mean about what God was going to do with Egypt later? Yes. Okay. Okay. Human foot will pass through it, and no animal foot will pass through it. It will be uninhabited for 40 years. 40 years. There's that number again. Huh, that's interesting. It didn't, yeah, I would need to go back and know more about what Ezekiel is looking at there. Is he looking back at what happened when Israel left Egypt? Or is he looking ahead to something that's going to happen and maybe has happened more than once? Because a lot of what we read in the prophets happens more than once. Yeah, there'll be something that happens like in their day. Like Isaiah would give a word. There's going to be a baby born. Well, there was a baby born. He was Hezekiah, who was a good king. Okay? Unto us a child is born. So boom, that happens. But then when you get into Yeshua's day, Matthew writes, this is Yeshua doing what Isaiah wrote about, even though another guy already did it, but now it's like going to be a big picture fulfillment of it. So it happens like that over and over again. I know this might get me in trouble, but it doesn't matter. I would even argue that the book of Revelation is a little bit like that. Okay? That when you look at the demise of civilizations, they have a pattern that happens. Okay? And it happens over and over and over again. So when Israel left Egypt, there was a great hole, a demise, if you want to, even though they weren't completely wiped out, they were certainly in bad shape for many years from losing all those worker bees, right? That Egypt was left in bad shape for however many years. But the book of Revelation is about the fall of Babylon and the enduring reign of the kingdom of Jehovah, and ultimately the marriage of the Lamb and the new heavens and the new earth, right? But the book of Revelation is a lot like what we're reading in Exodus, right? Plagues and judgments. And then what does God do in the book of Revelation to his beloved? He separates them. Okay, they're marked as his. And then there's an exodus. There's a removal, if you will, that happens. Okay? Wow, same thing. It's happening here, it happened here. It's going to happen again over here. It's not going to look exactly like it did, but it's going to be recognizable. There's going to be recognizable patterns that happen over and over again. So, good. Anything else? Yes. That's right. Yep. Yeah. That's right. Right. But whatever it is, I think the bottom line of that, what you're hearing is, look, this is the way the world works. This is not anything new. Isn't like God is going, oh no, now look. It's like, no, this is happening again. It has happened before. Will we turn anything around? Probably not. Okay? We know. Can God? Yes. Okay? If my people. But the bottom line is, don't worry about it. You can be active, right? You can get on board and be active and be light and do all that you're able to do, as long as you realize, this is very important, I believe, as long as you realize, number one, you aren't going to do it. Neither is any other human being. Okay? So we must always watch out for idolizing leaders, no matter who they are. Maybe they're somebody that we back and we support, but you got it. There's a line, The line is the realization. Look, we are all human beings, and God can use leaders that are not believers to do good. They don't have to be believers to do good. You can find that in the Bible over and over and over again. All right, but the bottom line is there's that line that's there, and sometimes we cross over that line. And sometimes we have to say, Father, forgive me for making an idol out of this, that, or the other individual or party or whatever. Okay? Yep. Go ahead. Oh, does he ever? God acts at the last minute. Sometimes, yep, that's right. How's that? That's right. That's right. So what is the reason for him doing things progressively? I was going to talk about this when I was talking about discipline. It's his love. Okay? If I want to discipline my grandson, I'm not going to begin with the highest level. Okay? I'm going to usually begin with words of warning. I wouldn't waterboard him in the beginning. No, I would never. I don't even know what that means. No, but anyway, you get the idea. And I think it's that way. Because what is the goal? The goal is not discipline. Discipline is not a goal. Discipline is a means. What is the goal? Obedience. Really, the goal is life. The goal is to get you to have life. And the way you have life is following him and living in his ways. Because he loves you, he wants you to have life. So when you don't follow in his ways, he brings discipline into your life. And sometimes it's words. Hey, I'm talking to you. Listen to me. Sometimes we don't listen to the words, so it may be something else. Sometimes it's the words of someone else in our life who brings discipline to us. But what does it say in Hebrews? If he disciplines you, you know that you're his. And he loves you. Yeah. Yes. 4 days late, but right on time. That's right. Yep. But he's dead, All right, we'll go now. That's right. Good. Yeah, remove the rock. Yeah, whatever. All right, well, let's pray. Father in heaven, we know that you love us. And we are loving you back, and we are asking that you help us as we learn how to obey and live with you more and more. And for this great example that you've given us in your word of the Exodus and your love for Israel and your desire to have a bride. And Father, may these words enliven our hearts. And we ask that if in any way we have been worried about what is going on around us, God, that you forgive us for any way that we have put our trust in man and not in you. We choose now, here and now, tonight, trust in you and you alone. In Yeshua's name, amen.